Rerun it. She isn't gonna
She's
rerun
always
it
done
because
that.
everything's coming out.
When they
They
rebuilt,
own everything.
when they rebuilt
Okay, I'm
that
gonna call the
building.
meeting to order. It is
It's
1:06.
She's
We do have a quorum. And can I get an approval of the agenda?
So moved, second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And if you guys wanna go early, Peter,
Sure, we'd be happy to.
we're gonna let you go early, so.
All right.
So, usually how the presentation works is if you would just, present to us
Mhm.
what we have in our packet, the reasons why you are bringing forward to us. And then we'll have them one by one. Everybody will ask you questions in regards to what they've seen in the packet.
Okay, very good.
Okay?
Could we go around the table quickly for
Yes, and
names?
we will,
Oh,
yep, we will.
okay.
So we're gonna ask you guys to start.
All right, sure. I have a presentation that will run about 15 minutes if you don't ask any questions, but if you'd like some clarifications during the presentation, feel free to do so. There will be a point at which I'm going to try to show you the website itself, and that's a point where I would like you to, maybe ask questions so we can say we'll take 15 minutes of time with me talking, and then it may extend to 20, 22 minutes, and then there'll be time for more general questions. I want to.
Excuse me, Peter, I'm gonna just say, I do want you to announce who you are.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm Peter Morrison, co-president of the Civic League, and I'd like to introduce Brooke Christian, who's partnering with us on this project through the end of this fiscal year, which is June 2019. The Civic League, as some of you may know, was founded long ago, 1903. We're the umbrella nonprofit for 25 neighborhood associations around the island. And our mission is to advance continuous improvement of the quality of life on the island by identifying important and emerging issues and basically trying to do something about them. In this case, what you're seeing is an example of how we serve as an incubator for initiatives to advance the public good. And where we succeed with an initiative, what we want to do is we want to hand it off to another entity that can keep it going on an ongoing basis, so that we prove it's a success. We say somebody take it over and keep it going so it's going to thrive and endure in an environment that we're not capable of managing. The reason we can't manage initiatives once they succeed is because we are an all-volunteer organization. We arrange forums, as you know. That pretty much exhausts our volunteer efforts, and we try to undertake occasional initiatives. But we really don't, we lack the resources and the wherewithal to run things, if you know what I mean. We don't have the operation in place even to retain someone to keep this thing going over time, because we don't have any director's insurance. We don't have any of the corporate infrastructure that you'd need to accept money and pay it out to people on a continuing basis. So that's kind of the strange logic of what this proposal is about. We're asking you to give money to another entity that is equipped to do that. I would say that I want to emphasize the Civic League is committed to this initiative. We can and we will stay involved, and we will continue to work partnering with Brooke and serving as a sounding board, giving her advice on how to make this thing grow and build out and expand and succeed. It's just that we can't do it on a full-time basis. So let me tell you a bit about what we're proposing. Simply stated, what we have created is a unique free resource and service that is designed to benefit homeowners and employers. What we want to do is augment the supply of stable, year-round housing for employees who serve us year-round. This has not got to do with the Nantucket Shuffle. It has not got to do with the tremendous upsurge of seasonal employees. We want to get the people who are our fellow community residents, happen to be working here and servicing us in various capacities, and we want to assure that they are able to live here so that they can continue to work for us. What we have in mind here, just to give you some concrete examples, are people like the healthcare workers, the nurses, and others who work at the Nantucket Cottage Hospital. We think in terms of public safety personnel, firefighters, police officers who respond to the 911 emergency calls we place. We're thinking of the teachers who nurture and inspire our children. And really, we are open to any employer, not just what we think of as the town or town employees, but any large employer who is willing to commit by providing us with an employer intermediary who is the employer side of this website and is in need of housing for people who are serving us, as opposed to just serving the summer surge. How is this going to work? The website identifies homeowners who have extra living space that they hadn't considered renting out, and it offers to connect them with employers whose year-round staff need housing. It could be a studio apartment, it could be a cottage, it could be a small house, it could even be a spare room or two in a private house. It's up to the homeowner to say, we used to be using this space, we have this space, but we're not using it now. Hadn't really thought about renting it out, wasn't sure how I would do it, wasn't sure what hurdles I'd have to go through. And we're saying, well, look through the website and you might get some ideas, and we're here to help you surmount those psychic hurdles. I'm going to give you a quick tour of how the website does this, and I want to start out by showing you that it presents by design an inviting entry point and a first impression. And you'll note that we have, the first thing you see are some endorsements from some important people. We have an endorsement from the town manager. We have an endorsement from the executive director of the Community Foundation for Nantucket, which gave us the initial grant that's taking us through through the end of June, a grant for about $23,000 to get this website up, designed, deal with all the legal mumbo jumbo, set it up in a way that it can be expanded going forward as demand materializes, and basically allows us the flexibility of adapting it to the new possibilities and maybe the new hiccups that we encounter. One of the things we have are a couple of, and this kind of illustrates a point that I want to make, which is to get people to think about things they hadn't thought about before. And what we're leveraging here are some stories that we got from Housing Nantucket, which are really terrific. If you look at them and you just say, well, what's this all about? You click on one of those things and you would see a 36-second, 37-second, very quick profile of someone who had this problem and who benefited from what Housing Nantucket was able to do. Now, Housing Nantucket can only handle a little bit at a time. You know, their successes are measured in one or two or three things in a fixed block of time. But we want people to get the sense that this is what's happening in our community and this is what can happen. The second thing is that once you get into the website, we present several pathways that are designed to guide the casual first-time visitor through the various possibilities, presenting them in the simplest form possible. This is just to get them to think about, well, what's this about? And one of our objectives here is just to build the talk in the community that, oh, they've got something out there. It's not for me, but you might be interested in it. What they're doing is, it sounds like you just go in and they tell you about things that are going on, and you can get on their newsletter. And that building of community awareness is part of our mission. We don't really know any other way to do it than to just try to build traffic and hope that a large number of people will have gained a first impression. A subset of them who may have some wisp of interest in this going forward but hadn't really thought about how they do it would go as far as to sign up for our newsletter. We just say, hey, if you want to keep informed of this, just give us an email address and we'll keep you informed on what's going on. It's as though you signed up to find out what Housing Nantucket was doing, but you weren't really in the market for it. But as you watch it, you get more and more concrete ideas. This initial step of getting people to sign up for the newsletter is a critical one because it establishes a channel for maintaining contact with potential home sharers. These are people that we can, whose vision we want to gradually nurture and shape by showing them concrete possibilities that exist and showing them what has happened in other people's situations, so they can say, well, gee, I see that's happening. I hadn't thought about that, but that might be something that I could do. And this all builds on the changing family and living arrangements that we have in our particular community, and really the changes that are going on throughout the United States. So we may get people who sign up for the newsletter, and weeks or even months may pass before we may succeed in awakening a concrete vision among a subset of them who've registered. And as we show them the different opportunities and the recent successes, we're hoping that they will then take the next step, and then we can kind of gently guide them down another pathway which says, if you want to know more about this, this is what you can do. You can give us your name, email address, etc., and you can start to tell us a bit about, what did you have in mind? Well, I've got a cottage that used to be occupied by someone but isn't occupied now. Used to be for the grandchildren. They've grown up and hadn't thought about doing anything with that, and really didn't want to get involved with the advertising it for rent. But this provides a way of focusing it on a certain type of employee that is pre-vetted in a sense. If you've been hired by the town, if you've been hired by the hospital, if you've been hired by the kinds of employers we have in mind, you're pretty much going to look like a safe bet, and you're going to have passed a lot of tests that would not otherwise have been conducted unless you had initiated them yourself. So what we are doing now is we've just finalized the website. We spent a lot of time on the legal mumbo jumbo because there are a lot of liability issues that we hadn't been aware of. And we are now embarking on a 4 to 6 month pilot test, which is the focus of the grant award that we got from the Community Foundation. And that is designed, you may ask, well, what is a proof of concept? That is designed over the next few months to demonstrate, first of all, that the website does in fact attract visitors. It attracts, a fairly significant flow of visitors, and that it, over a period of months, induces a meaningful fraction of those visitors to basically to inquire further by signing up for the newsletter, and possibly converts a handful of those into serious candidates who eventually pursue a housing arrangement that is headed toward expanding year-round habitable living space. This may be a process that unfolds over a 1 month period, a 6 month period, but we want to see evidence that it's on that track, because that's kind of the logic behind it, that there are a lot of people who haven't thought about doing this, but if they were exposed to this, enough of them would look into it seriously and actually move forward with it, that we would start to see a half a dozen or a dozen success stories over a period of a year or two. So assuming the idea works, what we want to do is scale up promotion. We want to expand outreach through June 2019. And I can go into the details of how we plan to do that, collaborating with Brooke. And when our current funding ends, starting in July, we anticipate having a website that we've shown works as our last tank of fuel runs dry, and we say, well, it's a great idea, but somebody has to take it on and keep it going. And I don't think that this is something where we can appear on Libby Gibson's doorstep July 1st and say, can you take this on now as the fiscal year starts? that's not something that, that is gonna work for the town, nor should we have any reason to expect it would happen that way. Assuming the idea does work, we want to scale up promotions and expand outreach, and we want to be able to transition the website to another local nonprofit that is simply going to serve as a fiscal intermediary who will retain Brook Christian part-time. We've engaged Brook as a part-time independent contractor who will manage the site part-time through June 2019, and thereafter she has agreed to continue handling all weekly responsibilities. And you can ask her what she thinks they will be, and we can sort of give you a sense of what we anticipate they will be. So the details in terms of logistics of how this would work is that we want to publicize and expand the website, transition it to a suitable nonprofit, and then what we have applied for with the grant here is to assure that a separate local nonprofit, and we're thinking tentatively of the Nantucket Interfaith Council, and we're still talking to them about whether it would work for them, because I know that they have basically had grants before and they're in a position to do what we have in mind. We want to have them maintain Brook's continuity as the part-time independent contractor starting in July. So let me close by saying the problem that we're addressing is we have fellow Nantucket residents who are serving the community who need a place to live. Otherwise, they're forced to leave. And I would say, if you want to know what the implicit costs of people who are forced to leave because they can't afford to stay, you just have to read that article in the Inky last year about the police department that hires police officers, funds them for 6 months full salary, tuition at the police academy. They come back, and after a year or two, they determine that they can't afford to live here. And having accumulated the human capital that $50,000 builds courtesy of the town, they then take a job on the Cape. So that's a hugely expensive loss of human capital. And that's only one example. I think the police department is the purest instance of where the savings could be if we could make it possible for a few police officers to be retained who might otherwise be forced to leave. Secondly, the potential opportunity here. Nantucket residents do have unoccupied living space. Some of you may know that the Census Bureau measures the full stock of housing here, and about half of the housing on Nantucket is classified as seasonal housing. Now, we're not talking about seasonal residents alone, but there's a lot of empty space on Nantucket, and we're kind of nibbling around the edges of it, saying, could we get just a little bit of it that might make a difference for people who really matter for a lot for all of us. Our organizational goals, as I've said, are to expand the reach of the website, to transition it to ongoing management, operation and refinement, and basically expansion to a suitable nonprofit that could do this year after year. And maybe eventually the town will take it over in some other way, but we do need to transfer it starting the end of June because our funding runs out. And Home Share Nantucket is unusual in that it aims to expand everyone's thinking about the new possibilities and to begin to realize them, to find ways to realize these possibilities. I like to think of it as kindling interest among Nantucket homeowners at various stages of life. Our premise is that some of us are amenable to new thinking as our circumstances change, and it might just be that what was an unthinkable concept last year could become a welcome idea for fellow community members who serve and safeguard us as fellow residents. So I'd like to end there and just leave some time for questions that you may have. I think I've left enough time to do so, and we can open up and just come at us with whatever for either or both of us, okay? Thank you.
Yeah, Peter, we're gonna introduce everybody that's here.
Sure, okay.
I'm gonna start over here next to Ann.
I'm Ann Medina, and I work for Nantucket Human Services.
I'm sorry, did you give the name?
Ann Medina.
Ann Medina, right, I know you, Ann.
I'm Denise Cronow. I'm the FinCom representative on CRC.
Okay.
Bert Johnson, Housing Nantucket.
Linda Williams, everything else.
John Belash, member at large.
Hi, Jeff.
Dorothy Hurts, member at large.
Right.
And Rachel Day, I'm the
Okay.
director for human services.
Good.
I have a lot.
Do you want me to tell you a little bit about me?
Yeah. Well, I'd like
Besides
Brooke
my
to-
name. So I'm Brooke Christian. I live here year round. I am a freelancer in business. I used to work at the hospital, but I would be serving as a part-time employee or a part-time consultant for this on a fixed fee basis. I have a lot of experience in, sorry, I feel like it's getting me, in nonprofit work, as well as, I feel fully vested on the island. And I thought, when Peter and I worked together,
Yeah, don't forget that.
we worked together at Cape Air initially, and then we are both part of the Shellfish Association. And Peter approached me asking if I had a few extra hours in my life to devote to this, and I just think it's such an incredible opportunity. So I am giving the rare bits of time I have left.
And I want to say that Brooke was one of the best ramp agents that I've ever worked with in 11 years. We're sorry to see her leave. She had to go off and get an MBA somewhere.
I did, yes.
So anyhow, that's who we are.
So Peter, before I open up the floor for discussion, whose baby was this idea?
Thinking?
Yeah.
My baby.
Your baby.
And Charles.
Charlie, I like to tell Charlie that I live at 30,000 feet looking down at the all the lights down there, and I come up with brilliant ideas that I learned to formulate at the Rand Corporation, most of which have no immediate applicability to the world down there. Charlie is the guy who's on the ground who says, that's not going to work. You need to do it this way. So we work kind of as a team. Charlie has dealt with the real political context in which this is set, and I mean the circumstances. I'm perhaps a little closer to than 30,000 feet in this case, because I kind of know from our firsthand experience what's going on in Nantucket. But the idea came to me out of a combination of things. One of which was when I worked at Cape Air, we had a lot of experience, a lot of day-to-day experience, and really close friendships with people who were basically from immigrant families and backgrounds, and they came from extended families that are not like the families that typify the ones we think of in the United States. And I discovered that our station manager, Johan, some of you may know, who's still our station manager, had put together a kind of a slowly evolving housing arrangement that involved every extended family member, brother, sister, and his mother living in this place that was designed that maybe had 3 bedrooms, but it was housing about 8 people. And they were all affording to live there, and they all shared the rent, and nobody caused any trouble. And every year or so, one would move on to a job somewhere else, another one would move in from somewhere that came to Nantucket, decided to work here. And I said, boy, that's an amazing situation. You got a lot of people being housed lawfully in a situation where it wouldn't work if it were a boarding house. It certainly wouldn't be working as well, but it's not a boarding house, it's an extended family. And there are a lot of families like that on Nantucket, not all of them impoverished. And there are a lot of families that have changed, whose children have gone off and left the 3rd floor empty, or who have other kinds of circumstances, who have lost a spouse, or who are new homeowners who are up to their ears in debt and are looking to make a little money by renting out some space that they may have in mind for a future child. So there's lots of opportunities here that people haven't thought about, and I'm a big fan of behavioral psychology, behavioral economics, and the psychological side of things where you have to give people examples of things that will make things work. And I can go on in that realm if you want, but there are a lot of things a lot of decisions that people don't make because they just haven't been positioned in a way that they can understand how easy it would be to do it if they just went along and did something. And that's kind of what inspired the idea, and it's gone through numerous iterations, but this is the product.
I think one of the beautiful things about this is that I'm sure we've all seen the Nantucket year-round housing page on Facebook, and it's like a monster in and of itself, and you get 400 replies on someone's listing, and this actually gives you Corey checked employees who have passed multiple background checks and who are reliable year-round workers who are just in that innate nonstop shuffle or really have to leave because they can't find a space. They can't find another place to get out of the shuffle even. And this brings a little bit of peace of mind to a homeowner to say okay, somebody a nurse who works at the hospital has been thoroughly vetted. And we can rely on that person and know that the hospital is presenting that person to say, we stand behind this person. And the same thing with the town or with any bigger organization that does that kind of stuff. And on the other hand, we're getting to meet these homeowners and kind of see what it is they're looking for. So you're not getting a lot of the stuff that happens on that year-round Facebook page, which is a little bit of throw the cards in the air and see where it lands. And I think that's one of the things that drew my interest to this, because it really is more of a calculated approach to fix a problem rather than I have a basement apartment, let me see how much I can charge for rent. And a lot of people coming into this program may not be thinking that the dollar amount is the most important thing, but saying this program is really beneficial to the people on this island and the growing community, and therefore want to put their apartment in as an option.
Let me give you a simple mind experiment. If I said there are 2 paramedics that were being hired here, and they're looking for either a basement or an attic to live in, they work long shifts, but they're around, to fix things on a case. You say, well, I don't need that today, but wind the clock forward 10 years. Would that be a little ID you might want to put on the shelf or post it and say, 10 years from now, if that were a possibility, I'd like to at least know more about it. I mean, it's not something you think about on a day-to-day basis. It's not something you're going to go on the website and say, oh, I want to do that right away. But over a period of time, as family situations change, it's an idea that at any given time, it might appeal to a half a dozen people on an island. And if you can house, a half a dozen people who are those kind of people, we regard it as a success story.
Okay. Denise, I'm gonna go right around the table.
Okay. On your application, Peter, you were talking about on page 5, the cottage hospital advertised for, they were looking for accommodations for 26 employees and they ended up with 6 to 8. So why would what you're suggesting be more successful? Because the way you presented this was presented as, well, this is what's happened when they just advertised and now this website. I'm not personally convinced that the website will drive different traffic and behavior than an appeal from the cottage hospital in the Inky Mirror. So,
Okay, I have 2 points I'd make. I don't know if the cottage hospital is doing this on an ongoing basis, and I would use that as a snapshot of 1 year, and I'd say, wouldn't it be great if this happened every year?
my attending question to that would also be, why would the website be more effective than a standing advertisement in the Inky Mirror with a phone number where there's a person at the end of the phone, which is basically what's going to happen anyway, you're just filling out a form. I'm not opposed to the website, but I'm just saying, as you don't have proof of concept, as it's all going to go dark on the 30th of June if the town doesn't give you money, is there another way to skin this cat without putting a lot of infrastructure in place, setting up with interface council, blah, 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 to get to proof of concept first? So that's
We
some of the
wanna
things
have
that
it-
struck me as I went through this.
Our premise is that we will have the proof of concept by June 30th, if not before. We want to see it working. And if it doesn't work, if it's not working by May, we'll ring you up and say, forget it, it didn't work. But what we're saying is what the hospital did through advertising, and I'm not sure that they really had an extensive program, they advertised and some people responded. They may have, gotten the cream off the top. The few people who at that time said, that's exactly what I want to do right now. And there may be nobody left for year two. And I don't in fact know whether the hospital is going to do it in year two. And if they do it in year two, they're only doing it for the hospital. They're not doing it for
Right,
the much
no,
broader universe.
no,
So
I
that's kind of
understand.
there was enough information from the hospital experiment to say it looks like you could get people to respond, although not a whole lot. But I would say if I took that as kind of, to me, the minimum threshold, I'd say if we could do that every year, 6 a year, then in 5 years we have helped 30 people. My expectation is that, our hope is that it would grow beyond that, but even that would be sort of a conditional success, because it wouldn't just have happened once.
Can I just speak briefly to your question? As a former employee at the hospital, I do know that the program that they did was just place the ad and see what happens.
Mhm.
And they didn't do any follow-up with the homeowners after getting the listings.
Mhm.
So they would just post them on like an internal website for the employees.
Yeah.
And if nobody was interested, they never got back to the person. If someone was, then they would, be the intermediary for that. But I do know that like for our process, like once I retrieve a form, say 2 people send it in, I would have ongoing monthly communication with those people just to be updating them, we have a new candidate, or, we don't have anyone else yet, but, don't give up. And vice versa with the organization's intermediaries, because that was a program that was done by HR.
Mhm.
And I know they have a million other things to do, so I think they were just sort of saying like, here's a blanket ad, let's see what happens. Where ours will be a very focused approach to me as the person on the other end saying, I'm taking an interest in, trying to cultivate new relationships and trying to keep people informed of what's happening, not just posting the listing and letting it kind of fall by the wayside. So maybe that gives a little bit.
Yeah,
difference, yeah.
I agree that follow-up is what's necessary. The part that I have the disconnect on is it doesn't take a website for you to answer the phone and follow up and keep a database and. So, and I also wonder if the population who has spare rooms spends a lot of time on the internet. So again, these are just what came to mind as I looked at it. I think it's a great concept. I think it's absolutely needed. I understand all of that. I just want to see it succeed, and as the town has limited funds to apply to everyone who's applying, it has to be where is going to be the most effective use of it. So that was my question. That's where my questions came from. So I'm sure John and everyone else has more questions. That's just where I started from.
Just one quick clarification. What we intend to do is, we have, the Civic League has a email list of about 300 people who are what we regard as engaged citizens who, have attended, one or another of our events. And our first step is going to be to send out a big email blast where we know that what we get on these typically is a 30 or 40% open rate. When they see Civic League announcement, they open it.
Mhm.
And of those who open, maybe a third or a half actually read it. So that's a lot, we think that's a lot better than just an ad in the Inky, which might cost $500 or $1,000 and give it the best.
Okay, thank you. It's a nice website, by the way. I did go through it extensively before I came today.
Hey, Bert?
Peter, first one thing, your example about the police, you probably shouldn't use that.
Yeah.
Because the reason the police leave, we pay for their education. They have to stay here so long, so many years, to repay it. If they leave early, they gotta pay it out of their pocket. 2, this is a very small police department. There aren't very many sergeants, very few lieutenants, only 1 captain. There's no chance for advancement here. People come here, they buy a home, they stay for a long time. The reason these kids leave right away has nothing to do with housing out here, it's with job advancement. Once they've fulfilled their obligation to repay the police academy, they leave to get a job in a bigger community that pays more, and they can buy a house, and they have a chance for advancement. It's a bigger police department, they have more sergeants, so they have a chance. So that's what happened.
Good point.
Now, how many people have actually, signed up for your program?
We have
We
not
haven't
gone live
applied
yet.
yet.
I'm not gonna lie, we're gonna go live as soon as we get the legal fine print finalized, that's what the proposal is.
You talked about query checks. Every person that comes in that wants to take a room has to go through a query check?
They would have already through the organizations that we'll start targeting in the beginning.
Wait a minute,
Not necessarily.
but my problem is someone can get through your system without getting a query check or not.
No, we would never be dealing with the applicants to rent directly. It would be through an intermediary of the organization. So for instance, if it was the hospital, I would be talking with HR, who would be vetting the candidates and saying, here's a person that is looking for housing that's gonna have to move off island. I would never be speaking to the actual candidates, and we do that for multiple reasons.
Yeah. What we're dealing with is, we're dealing with employers, not prospective people.
So
who
you
want to rent.
require the employer
Yeah,
to do a query check on their employee.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they don't become part of our little club unless they meet our standard. Now, you can think of the town of Nantucket, the Cottage Hospital is two examples. You say they're a large employer. Suppose it's Stop and Shop, or suppose it's a large landscaper. We'd say, well, we need to know a lot more about how you screen your employees before we accept you as part of this club. And the reason we keep it open is because we don't want to say it's just for the town, but we sort of really like the idea of it being, dominated by the town of Nantucket, Cottage Hospital, and the town, of course, with the, rivulets of employment stretching out to the school.
But you're losing me, Peter, because if you only want to go to the big employers, they have the resources to
Yeah.
take care of their employees. I'm thinking about a small employer like Aunt Leah's Fudge or something like a small business like that. They need 4 or 5 employees for the summer. They find the kids that come over here, and they don't have a place to put them.
But you're not talking
No,
about
wait a
summer.
minute.
I think
Please, let them respond.
one clarification would be yes, we are concerned about Allias and their seasonal employees, but this program is really designed for year-round workers. So people that are going to be living here 12 months out of the year for not just 1 year. These are long-term people that are embedded in our community. So for instance, a nurse at the hospital, a new firefighter, anything of that nature. I mean, it costs the hospital, and I know you said that big employers have the resources to take care of their people, but knowing firsthand and having worked for those organizations, they don't. And they have no meaningful way to say, here you are as a nurse, we want to hire you year round, but we can't find you housing. And they will say they're not capable of doing it. This is why this is so important, because the program designed specifically to help those people as a resource, so that someone like Kai at the fire department doesn't have to spend all her time trying to find housing for someone else. She would just put in that they have an interest in being on the books as someone who might have a potential tenant. And I think that's the difference between a large organization trying to just secure housing in some way, shape, or form for their employees versus what we're trying to do, which is to connect people in a meaningful way to provide year-round housing for people who really want to be here, not
But
just for seasonal.
I think you're missing the mass of people that are needed out here. The seasonal people are the ones that are needed.
Oh, yeah, no question about it.
And you're saying, well, we're not gonna
That's not.
address
that's not-
them, we're only gonna address the year-round people.
I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. That is not at all what we're dealing with. We're dealing with, when the town says, we are challenged, the town of Nantucket and the hospital, we are challenged by the difficulty in helping our employees, either prospective ones or existing ones, secure housing. That's the part of the problem, the little 5% wedge of the pie that we're focused on. The rest of it, we can't, this has nothing to do with that. And we're not envisioning a mass, exchange of information among, that's how, that is a market process, however it's organized by large employers, who need seasonal workers. But we're trying to get at, for example, the fire chief who left, if one could avert, a big loss, or if one could, let's say, enable us to secure housing for a prospective Brian Turbot who said, I'd like to take the job, but I can't afford the housing. It's that kind of strategic, instance that we want to be able to say, this is a way of solving those problems.
Yeah, but I have a real problem with those people. They're paid very well, they get a salary large enough they can afford to rent a place out here.
I don't think
Okay,
we're
I
necessarily
think I'm
working
in
on that issue necessarily. This would be just, we're cultivating a list of homeowners that may have space. It's not that the people can't afford it, these would still be rented places. We're not handing out housing for free, it would still be a rental. It would just be that we're putting together a match of someone that has a nice salary and can afford the rent, but can't find the opportunity to get a year-round rental with someone who realizes that they have a little bit of extra space and would like to rent it out. So we're keeping year-round people here on island versus the cost of turning people over by having like a temporary nurse in place is huge. And I'm sure that holds the same truth for any town employee. You don't want to keep spending the money to bring someone in to keep them for 6 months. And then they leave because we either can't find them housing, and that doesn't mean that they can't afford it. It just means that, there maybe aren't enough people that know that there could be a program like this where they could match up.
Okay. Bert, you happy with, have you asked your
I've
questions?
asked my questions, I'm not necessarily happy, but.
I understand that,
I've
but I'm
heard
just-
what they had to say, yeah.
Okay, Linda?
I got a lot of questions. Having been involved with housing, because I am on the Housing Trust, I'm on the Housing Authority. And CPC, which used to fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and has now started funding again. I'm gonna go right to one of the first things that struck me. Interfaith Council is absolutely not the appropriate place to be, at all. They have Janice, she covers fuel assistance, food pantry, rental assistance, all that stuff. They don't have the wherewithal to take on another employee because the CPC is paying for her salary. The Housing Nantucket, who is a housing entity, would be a better place to partner with, and they are a 501c3. The Housing Trust wouldn't be involved in something like this, and it took us years to get Tucker hired as a housing person for Nantucket. We're trying to get one for the Housing Trust. They're not gonna give us one. Thinking you're gonna get paid by the town for what you do is not feasible, given what we're fighting right now. Housing Nantucket is probably the only venue to put it, and they've got an office, and they see this type of need, and they have a waiting list and everything else. The Housing Authority is not allowed to take it on. There's a confluence of problems here. Because we just did the housing production plan, so we're well versed in that at the Housing Trust, and the year-round housing stock is going away. That's what has caused a tremendous amount of lack of year-round affordable housing, and I use that word affordable loosely, because that's another problem. And a lot of the year-round housing stock has been sold to seasonal, which is what has caused the massive crunch for nice year-round housing. The other issue is that the more the market is squeezed out of the year-round housing stock, and I've had friends who've been in the same house for 20 or 30 years, it was sold right up underneath them, they've had to go find something else. And they've been here forever, and they're professionals. And she's single, which made it even more difficult to afford something as a single person, because you can't afford that. You can't afford $3,000 a month. That's the other part of this whole housing thing, is the sheer cost of a year-round house. So you may have somebody say, yeah, I got a house, an employer want a house, I got a year-round employee. How's that person supposed to afford that? You've got to deal with these other issues, which is why there was some skepticism when Charles came to present it. I forget if it was the planning commission or the planning board. I saw him like 2 or 3 times at different venues with this particular idea. There was a lot of skepticism because it was myopic to some extent, because there are all these other factors of housing that you're not taking into account. It sounds like I agree with Denise, it sounds like a great concept. I don't see a proof of concept, which is why I was skeptical before. And when you get to the hospital discussion, they're planning on doing 75 units across the street, now that they've got all this other stuff going, because they're tired of looking for places for people to go and visiting doctors and everything else. They're planning on 75 units over there where the counseling center is. So that is happening. Marine Lumber is flying their people over. Yes, they've asked me in the past to help them find a house to put their people in during the week. They fly home on the weekends. We haven't been able to find a year-round house for that either. And Marine Lumber has the wherewithal, so they're still searching. The school, they're always searching, and that is where affordable year-round housing has impacted the school system greatly, because they cannot keep the young, energetic teachers because they cannot afford $3,000 a month. Now, what's happened with a lot of us who used to rent rooms, and I don't anymore, for a lot of reasons. The Corey check only checks Massachusetts. It does not check New York. It does not check Connecticut necessarily. It does not pick up stuff from elsewhere. That isn't going to do much for you, except in the state of Massachusetts, from my understanding the last time I went through this. A lot of us will only rent to people that we know have referred them to us and have some background someplace. This doesn't do it for me. If I'm a prospective person with a room, and I have 2 extra rooms, I would not do this, because I don't have enough control over that situation. A lot of us do rent under the table, because there's still discussion about these rental taxes for rental rooms. If you go and you put yourself on this site as a person who has a rental, whatever it is, you may be running into trouble with these prospective rental taxes, which they're still talking about at the state, which they're talking about here. So that's another reason why a lot of people rent under the table, because the minute you put your thing on here, you have to declare it and you have to pay taxes, or you're going to get taxed as a short-term rental or even a long-term rental. So there's a lot of aspects to those of us who've rented rooms for years. Who guarantees the payment? The employer? Or is the person renting the room the one that's having to pay it? Then just a comment on the website, which I think is a great website. The couple that's on the right-hand picture that says Housing Nantucket underneath it, they had nothing to do with it, Housing Nantucket. Those guys got a covenant house. And that was done by the Housing Authority and Housing Assistance Corp. So they were recently married, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and they had some place to live until they found a place to live. But they got a covenant house through the lottery system. So that probably is not the best Nantucket shuffle, because they only moved back here when he became a teacher. It's probably not the best person on that website to do the Nantucket shuffle. So, and I've got a lot of other questions, but I think you've got some work to do here on proof of concept. But I think there's a lot of other aspects to this housing thing, but I don't think the housing interfaith is the right place to go, because we'd have to pay for it. The CPC would probably pay for it. And I don't see that coming. But I think Housing Nantucket could get a grant for that, because it actually finds housing as opposed to provides housing.
Okay, I'm gonna actually have to, I'm sorry, our next people are outside in order to keep this moving. But at this point, Peter, there are, I have some questions, and I know that John probably has some questions.
I think everybody's asked any questions I might
Okay.
have.
So I'm actually gonna, and I think Rachel has some, so I think what we're gonna like to do is see if we can reschedule you to come back and talk with us
Sure,
to finish
sure.
this up,
Okay.
okay? And if we have the agenda right there in front of us. Would you be able to come in on December 17th?
That's fine.
Possibly.
December 17th is full.
No, you have a 9 o'clock opening.
No, it's the start of the
9 to
meeting.
9:15, that's just at the beginning.
Oh, I see, sorry, I'm sorry.
There's 3 in January, I believe. If you look at the bottom and then on the back page,
Yeah.
those are the dates that are available with nobody scheduled.
16th and the
14.
25th.
How about
16th.
January 14th? Are you on island?
That is not likely to be, no, I won't be on island, but there was a date that I had put in tentatively January 7th.
No, that was for, that's something else, yeah.
Anytime the week of January 7th?
We do not have a meeting posted. We actually have, our next meeting, after the 14th is Wednesday, January 16th.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone the whole week or two of that time through.
You can always give us a memo if we wanna submit the questions.
You know what, can we look at this and get back in touch with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just answer one question?
Okay,
real
so
quick?
we might be able to do Peter without, and maybe you could call in if Brooke.
Yeah, we can do that, sure, if you'd like to do that.
Okay, why don't we look at that?
Right.
Could you do that on the 14th?
Uh,
Brooke, could you be here and Peter, you call in?
I'm gonna be tied up the whole day of the 14th.
January.
January 14th.
January 14th.
Yeah.
I should be able to do that, yeah. Yes, the 14th, I'll say that, as long as it's not any later than 1 o'clock.
Yeah, our meeting, it would be,
Nine.
we have it from 9 to 11, so I would probably ask that you come around 9:15.
Okay, 9:15, that'll work.
Okay, 9:15 on Monday,
Right.
January 14th.
Okay. I just want to say, we've already approached, just to answer your one question, when the housing Nantucket, and we did our best to persuade them, but they didn't want to do it. They said it just was, they didn't want to take it on, it was outside their charter.
It's not actually outside the charter,
Right, well,
we created them, Housing
Okay,
Authority
well,
had created
They
them.
didn't want to do it, so.
Yeah, well, they just didn't wanna do it, they can't, it's
well,
not
for
outside
whatever
the
reason.
charter.
But I just wanted you to know that we've looked around and we went, with sort of this tentative idea that this is the only one we know so far, but we welcome any suggestions you may have. If you have an idea for any kind of a nonprofit that just involves saying, we gotta get an invoice from her every 2 weeks or month and pay it, accept the money, pay it, send it a 1099 form.
They really wouldn't have a whole lot
Yeah,
to
Right.
have
no management
to
at all.
do.
That's what I'm saying, they just
Okay,
didn't wanna
we
do it.
will, and we'll come back on the
Yeah.
14th and we'll
All right.
give you some information.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
everybody.
Brooke.
Nice to
Thank
meet
you.
Peter,
Okay.
thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. You do have a beautiful website.
Yeah, if you want,
It's very nice.
we'll show you who did it. You just did a good job.
You're supposed to give credit to us.
No,
I'm
it's
the
just-
next one.
Small Friends is still my favorite proposal that we get in terms of readability.
Yeah.
It's
Very precise,
straightforward.
very precise.
answers
And
the
I would sign
question.
up to do the site visit,
Yeah.
because it's fun to go over there.
Me too this time.
This is driving. We ride right along.
Hey Jackie. Hi Courtney.
Hi, how are you? Would you like us
Good.
down this route?
As you like.
Perfect.
We were just here, and it's, just because they gave us a presentation, so.
Yeah, Rachel, if you can do anything, fix that.
I'm gonna break it.
You can't shut it off?
I think it has to do
No,
with this.
push it this way, away from it.
I
towards
did,
us.
it doesn't,
didn't
it's, I
Well, you
think
can
it has
always
to do with
unplug
the
it.
computer.
You can unplug it,
Technology 1, people 0.
just follow the line.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're sorry we ran a little late, but they were giving us a presentation that had an awful lot of questions, so. If you would do us a favor, and we are being recorded, you should know that, okay? So if you would give us your name and what your position is, and then we'll do that around the table before we start, and then how we run this is, and welcome.
Thank you. So just to get everyone up to speed, this is Nicole Olson. She's going to be the incoming executive director at Small Friends starting in January. So today's her first day, and we brought her along for a little.
We're right in the fire, right?
So,
First day, hat in
Where are you
hand.
going?
I'm going to the Artists Association.
So Nicole, how we run this is that we will do the presentation names, and you will do your presentation, and then we will ask you questions in regards to what we won't ask you,
Okay.
but you will see how it's
Yes,
run, okay?
thank you.
So if you would start, Nicole, and then
Sure.
we'll go around.
Yep, my name is Nicole Olson, and I will be the incoming executive director at Small Friends.
Courtney Bridges, Executive Director at Small Friends. Jackie McCready, and I am the Development Director for Small Friends.
Ann Medina, and I work for Nantucket Human Services.
Denise Cronow, I'm the Finance Committee representative on the Contract Review Committee.
Bert Johnson, Housing Authority and Housing Nantucket.
Linda Williams, member at large, etc.
John Balash, member at large of the
Dorothy Hurst, member at large,
And chairperson.
and chair.
Rachel Day, Human Services Director.
She got it.
And tech. And tech.
Yeah,
advisor.
tech.
A general techie.
I don't wanna buy them a new one when I break it.
So we'll take her name off.
No, the HCC would be very happy to have that unclosed.
Okay, I don't know which one of you is gonna present, but.
Well, I would love to tell you a little bit about our grant. We are asking for $15,000 for Small Friends for 2 of our programs, for the extended day program, which is the hours that we operate after typical daycares and schools close. So we stay open until 5:15, which allows families on the island to stay at their jobs until 5 o'clock and then come pick up their children. Whereas most of the schools and daycares close around 2:30 or 3. So we're asking money to fund those extra hours that we are open. And the second program that we're requesting funding for is our snack program. And we feel that this is an extremely important program. We do not give lunch to the kids, but we give them 2 healthy snacks every day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And for some of our students, this is the most nutritious food that they will eat all day. We give them a source of protein as well as a fresh fruit or vegetable. And this is once in the morning, once in the afternoon. And you'll note in the grant that 20% of our families qualify for the Women and Infant Children Support Program. So this is important that none of the children go hungry. We don't want any child, Small Friends, to be hungry and to be malnourished. So that's what we're asking for. And I don't feel like I need to say a whole lot more because you know how great we are.
Some of us have had kids.
That's right, have gone through Small Friends. That we are at 30 years. 30 years. This is a milestone for us, and 10 years in our new building. I guess we could still call it a new building after 10 years.
Yes.
It feels new to me.
It is still new.
Okay, I'm gonna, you have nothing else to say?
Courtney, did you want to?
Courtney?
I think that Small Friends is a very important part of our community. We've had a collaborative relationship with the town for a long time, and your support is really important to us. And the support that we offer the town and Nantucket that's right at our mission. So I think we really align there. And we're happy to answer your questions.
Okay, I'm gonna start with Denise. We're gonna work our way around the table.
Perfect.
Okay. Excellent proposal, by the way.
Thank you. That's all Jackie's hard work.
Really my favorite one to read.
thank
It's really, you should train everybody else. And, there we go. Just quick question. You have fundraising expense of approximately $86,000 on funds raised of approximately $140,000, which is 62%. So I was just interested to get a little bit more background on what is in the fundraising expense. I mean, you obviously come out ahead. It doesn't cost you more to raise the funds than to get the funds, but what is some of the components, the big ticket components of that?
Our primary fundraising expense is for the event under the tent.
Okay.
Or the Nantucket
Okay.
Art and Artisan Show.
Okay.
That's the big
That
art
makes
show
sense.
out
All
of
right.
Bartlett's Farm.
Yep.
And we have to rent the tents
Okay.
and the floor.
Yep.
One big tent.
Okay. That's clear.
Okay.
That's all I needed. Good. That was it. It's very straightforward.
Bert?
Yeah, is this what we funded last year too?
The
Same,
extended
the
hours.
extended hours.
You
like
funded
that.
the extended hours last
But not
year,
the
but not the snack program. We did have a funder for the snack program. And then 2 years ago, they decided that they wanted to change their funding. And they're still giving us money, but not for the snack program. They're actually helping us with some classroom supplies instead.
Did we not do the funding of the snack program a couple of years ago?
I think
After the year
historically
after the
we
playground,
started
we
it.
did it?
That,
Yeah.
yeah, that
After
was,
the
Launch
playground.
that.
was
Yeah.
that 3
Right.
years ago?
It was actually two,
Was
so
it?
last year we did just the extended day. The
Okay.
year before, we did the snack program. The year before that, we did the
playground.
playground.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
How large a waiting list do you have? Denny?
Right now, our wait list is about 110 families. Most of these families are looking for the early care component.
Yeah.
And Small Friends is the only large group licensed early care facility on Nantucket. So
Early
this is
care is under what age?
under 2.9. And we do have families who are also waiting for preschool, but not as many.
And we're enrolled at capacity with 69 children. That's as many as we can take.
I only asked because my granddaughter's on the wait list.
On the wait list.
And I didn't know how many people were on it. I thought maybe 10
Hey,
people.
you're not
That's a
allowed to do
conflict.
that.
Don't say it on the record. Don't say it on the record.
They give preference to alumni and.
No, don't ask questions.
It was great. I was impressed last year when I was out there on how quiet and well-run all the kids were taken care of and.
Did you come at nap time?
No, I came in the middle of the day. They were kids were doing stuff all over, but they were all well managed and there was not the old free-for-all I remember when my kids went to the old.
We have an amazing group of teachers right now, which is excellent. And we're also able to staff the building beyond the state ratio requirements. So the state would require 2 teachers for 7 infants. We have 2.5 or 3 teachers for 7 infants. And that allows what you saw, Bert, everybody to be engaged, happy, and working on projects. If someone needs a little extra attention, there's extra support, and that helps with staff retention as well.
I was impressed with that last year. That's all. So the company that was doing snacks we don't have any chance for a food service provider or someone to do snacks for you?
Well, fortunately, we have a good relationship with the food pantry. And in the past, they were helping us get some of our snacks from the food bank
In Boston.
in Boston.
Yeah.
That's right.
They had a personnel change over at the food pantry, and so this dropped off a little bit. But we have been back in touch with Janice Herrera, and she has assured us that we will reestablish that relationship, and we'll get a little bit of help with some of the snacks. I mean, of course, there's still going to be an expense, but it will be less of an expense for us.
Plus they send the van up to get their stuff and they bring the van back, so
Yes.
it takes off that part of it.
Yeah.
And we have a great relationship with Stop and Shop as well. They prepare all of our fresh fruits and vegetables based on what they have on hand, so it gets a good variety for the kids. And we get those each week, and they give us an excellent discount, and they don't charge us for the preparation costs, and they portion it out as required by the health department.
Nice.
So that's a really nice
Very good.
collaboration as well.
That would be my youngest son's father.
Oh, nice.
Bert, do you have any other questions?
No, that's it for me.
Okay, Linda.
That's the questions from the one before you. This is the questions for this one.
Good job, Kathy. Thank you.
Done.
Thank you.
I just can echo what Bert said about the impression I had when we visited last year. Very, very impressive. But I certainly had no questions. Obviously, this is something that is terribly important for the children that you are trying to service.
I have a couple of questions.
Great.
But very easy ones. Is your tuition base still about $251 a week, $250 per family?
We've actually had an increase in tuition. We are at $330 a week for the infant toddler side, and $285 a week for the preschool side. And common practice would be just to raise tuition a small bit every year, 0.5%, 1%. That's just to cover the increase of costs. And in order to focus on our mission, and because we had great support from the town, from the golf club, from the community foundation, we didn't have a tuition increase for a long time. And then we found it necessary to bring the tuition up to comparable costs of other programming. So that's our current tuition rate. It's comparable to other what full-time rates would be.
And how many children do you have in the extended day program? Like
100%.
100% of them.
All children, and when you enroll at Small Friends, you enroll from 7:45 to 5:15.
But how many actually stay? Some do leave, correct?
About 10
It's
children
all
leave at
class.
3:30.
Yeah.
Everyone else stays.
So because their parents are teachers now anyway.
Right?
Yeah.
So about 1.6%. Okay. The only thing I would have to say to you is, over the few years that I've watched the grant process and been able to go out and see what you've done, you have used the grant money as stated, and it's been fun to watch. It's fun to watch, even drive by now and still see the playground being used the way that it's used. Congratulations for actually doing it and fulfilling what you say you do.
Thank you. Well, we work hard as a team. We set our goals and measure them, and we try to deliver. So.
Yeah, it's well done. Nicole, I'm just gonna ask this so that the board sort of gets an idea, since you are now gonna be new. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, since next year you will be the one presenting?
That's true. Sure. So I am originally from Central Mass area. We recently moved on island in April. My husband took a position here and we packed up our home and moved. My background, I worked for YMCA, also nonprofit, for 18 years. I ran a child care center licensed for 65 children. I ran an after-school program licensed for 52, and then several off-site after-school programs, each licensed for 52 each. I oversaw our summer camp program and all youth programming for the YMCA.
Sounds like you're uniquely qualified. for Nantucket.
When
You're
I
so
received her
lucky.
application, I thought it was like a prank from my board. I'm so excited to see where Nicole takes Small Friends. She's really ready to take it to the next
You,
level.
So
you
you're
guys
giving-
have enough land to expand your building?
And expand the capacity. You do have enough land.
So we're looking at a feasibility study, and this has been a hot topic today.
Yes, it's come up a few times.
Because of the wait list, also the clear need on the island, the needs assessment illustrates that we do have a requirement to support our working families and of, everything that they need, which a lot of that has to do with childcare,
Just your
And-
infants.
especially infant toddler spaces.
Yep.
Now, the model of Small Friends from a financial standpoint, you can think of the infant toddler as a loss leader. Those rooms are expensive for us to run. The preschool side of Small Friends, it costs less, as we made clear, but it also funds the gap that would be incurred by the infant toddler. So in order to have more infant toddler spaces with our current business model, we would also need to have more preschool spaces. And we look at a lot of options. We look at a sister building, which we could fill tomorrow off our wait list. The asterisk mark would be staff. How can we recruit, retain, train, and house staff members to fulfill that?
Do you have a capital campaign to
We don't
go
have a
down this
capital
road?
campaign right now. We did to have the first building, and
Yeah.
so if we went down that way, it would be a capital campaign.
Because everybody else, the boys club, everybody else has done it. You guys need to do it, because there's an absolute need.
There is
There was a need
definitely.
when my son was there.
We do.
Over at the housing authority office building.
Right.
But there is an absolute need to expand the services out there.
And what we do well. We're proud of the work we've done, and I think if anyone on island was equipped to meet those needs, it would be Small Friends.
Yeah.
But we just have to nail down the details of how.
Because even with Whalers having trouble getting the qualified staff to keep going. And my other two went there, and they have a fraction of the staff since that whole mess.
They start at 2.9, right?
Yeah.
$3.
And they have to be potty trained.
I think it's not We Whalers any longer. It's
I
Nantucket
know, whatever,
Children's
I don't care whatever they
Children's-
call it, it's
Right,
that
it
building.
is, just a correction, it's not We Whalers.
It all.
What's it called now, Dorothy?
I think it's Nantucket Children's Center. Nantucket Children's Center. We're just clarifying that because we are on audio and it should be clarified.
It's always gonna be Blue Others to me.
So you were staying on for 1 month to put the transition through?
So I had a 6-month contingency at Small Friends, so when I let them know that I'd be moving on, I'll stay on for the full 6 months, and that will expire January 1. So we have a whole month together, which is really great.
That is fabulous. And the other thing I think would might be interesting just for some board members that haven't been out there is to just tell the longevity of your staff. I know that there are staff members that actually were there when I adopted my son and brought him to the island, and they were there, his teacher.
Who was his teacher?
Jen?
Jen,
Oh, Jen.
Jen was his
Yeah,
teacher.
Jen's been there since Evan was there.
like
Yeah, 25 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Evan's 22.
So I think that's important that maybe some people here that don't know that you've retained staff for that long, which says something about Small Friends on another note.
Joanne's been there for like 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
She's in the infant classroom.
She's like the baby whisperer.
Yeah.
We have our anchors, definitely staff members, and even though our staff, they're not paid well compared to other positions they could have on the island, when you get into education, you do it because you're making such an impact for families and children. And Small Friends it gives teachers the flexibility to teach how they feel is developmentally appropriate and the support to really impact young children. So I think that those are the keys in retaining our staff as long as we have.
Yeah, it's nice. Jen, I still see Jen this day. She'll ask me how he is. So it's pretty impressive that you kept people on that one.
Yeah,
So
Evan
just
remembers,
kudos to you.
Evan remembers his teachers there, and the other two remember the teachers that we went with.
And
So
Courtney,
funny.
thank you for your leadership.
Yes, it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
You've done a wonderful job. Jackie, I think you were a great asset to Small Friends too when you came in. It really made a big difference for them.
Thank you.
And Nicole, it sounds like you will
Hit the ground running.
be, yeah,
She's
it sounds
ready.
like you got it.
Thank you.
I think you're gonna be a great team, and I think this is gonna be great for next month for you two together.
Yeah.
And
So
Nantucket-
congratulations on all,
Nantucket's an
congratulations on your
unusual
new job too. I wish you the
you.
very best.
Thanks, I'm excited about it, and Eloise will still be at Small Friends, so.
Oh, there you go.
I promised Nicole I'd join the PTN.
That always helps.
Start recruiting before she really leaves.
So, just for the record, I did speak with Peter before, and I should have said this, but I did speak with Jackie this morning, and, hold on, you are scheduled,
Oh, yes,
January 4th. You are scheduled for January 4th at 10 a.m., Bert and Denise.
great, that'll be Nicole's second day.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you guys, we know you have a full schedule and we really appreciate all the time you guys spend here, meeting with everyone, reviewing the proposals, and, taking care of a lot of needs on our island, so, thank you.
Thank you for what you do.
The unsung heroes, the volunteers.
Right?
You
Thank
wouldn't
you.
keep the job unless it paid so well.
I'd be a rich woman if I got paid for all this.
There we go.
Okay, thank you very much.
You guys need
Thank
anything
you very
else from
much.
us?
We actually
No?
do not.
Great, thank you.
Best of holidays,
Thank you.
everybody.
Nice
Thank
to meet
you.
you all.
Welcome. Nice to meet you. Thank
Welcome,
you.
Nicole.
Jackie, call
Yeah,
me
really good
if
luck, Courtney, Nicole.
maybe
Good luck.
applying to
Thank you.
CPC.
Thank you, Jackie.
Affordable housing.
She's
so you
gonna
can
be
have
amazing.
staff.
Okay.
'Cause I think most of your people would have qualified.
All of them.
And that deadline would be next September, but that would be part of your potential capital campaign.
Thank you.
I'll take that.
I have it. Thank you.
I have it free. It's a small print.
ASAP. With the red ribbon.
You gotta sneak out from
I'm not sure how much you're sneaking.
When you announce it, yeah.
Hey, Linda, we are scheduled to meet at the corner table on January 7th, or January 7th at 10 a.m.
Where, who, with who?
Civic League,
At where, on the table?
corner table.
And that's the Civic League.
Well, yeah, only because somebody gave us a presentation, so we're not, sorry that it feels that way.
What time?
At 10 a.m.
And I have another one when we're meeting with the hospital?
Is this
Not
the
yet?
hot seat
We the
side of the
hospital yet?
No, I haven't heard that.
Should we go down one in case Holly?
Why don't you move all the way down, because I'll have Holly sit in the hot seat.
Okay.
What about Fair
Oh, that's
Winds?
not fair.
She knows everything.
She knows everything.
Dorothy, do
You
we
know
have
what
a
I'm
date on
talking.
Fair Winds yet? Fair Winds date?
No, we have not.
Okay, so just
I
that
will
one.
let you know as the dates.
So just that one.
Okay, welcome.
Dorothy, we're just stepped out for a second. Do you
Thank
wanna wait
you.
till he comes back?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Thank you. As everybody was watching, I did not watch that.
I make an excellent table monitor.
You do.
Were you the hall?
I know they're
in the
looking for
school?
them up at the school.
I was the one that you always would chase.
No, I would chase you out and lock the door.
I was not good.
You didn't think she was coming? I thought she was.
I
She
assume
is,
she was.
she is coming. She told me she was coming.
She told me she was coming.
Yes.
She promised me she'd be here.
And she did write to me this morning and asked me what time. So,
I hope she's not downstairs.
no, she'll come.
Yeah, I assumed it would be downstairs, but, I mean, even though it said this room.
They're usually downstairs when you guys meet, that's right.
I still opened the door, I figured it was easier to open that door than to
Go up the stairs.
go upstairs and find out it's downstairs.
Excuse us for a minute.
Uh-oh, I'm losing him instead of getting him back.
One by one.
Failing at the hall.
I am failing.
Carrie Ann did something I'd never seen anyone do. She took the elevator.
Took a long time. Probably went faster to walk. I was like getting nervous. Now I know for sure it works slowly.
You all must be familiar with Skype. I've never actually. We have.
Yeah, I think I have an account.
Oh, really? Yeah. I had to finally learn because my daughter, who's been in Australia 19 years, just had her first child at 41 years old.
Ooh,
Erin just had her first
Oh,
child.
yeah.
And I had to learn how to use Skype, and it's still a confusing thing to me because I have a flip phone.
Well, I was gonna say, I was admiring your flip phone.
So you do it through
I
your
like the
computer?
holdout,
Yeah.
it's good.
Has to be done with a computer.
Yeah.
And thank God my other son is having his fourth this week on Thursday.
Oh, nice.
But he lives here with those kids. Yay.
You can just drive there.
Yes, I can.
That's adorable. It's awesome that you can do that.
That's the only way I'm ever gonna see this kid until she comes back for a
Yeah.
visit next summer.
Yeah.
And the kid's gonna have an Australian accent.
Well.
It'll be a
so
mix, maybe.
You're gonna be talking already?
They think Erin's from Ireland because her accent's so in between ours and Australian, because she did live in Ireland for a year, so they all, and she looks Irish because she's red curly hair and freckles and green eyes, but they think that she's from Ireland because her accent is nothing like an American accent anymore.
Okay, we're gonna give Holly just another minute.
Yeah,
okay,
well,
just out of
why don't we-
respect.
You guys
I
are.
hear her, see?
I hear
was
the
good
heel.
with a minute.
We hear the boots.
Oh,
This way.
Over there.
You can sit anywhere. Just for reference, just so everybody knows, I'm giving a form to Holly. And Holly, I'm gonna ask you to read this form, and everybody, just so you know what the form is the tax compliance. No, I'm sorry, it's not the wrong one. It is, I'm asking her to do the non-collusion again, because when she did sign our non-collusion, she signed it as president of Pumpkin Pond Farm. And we're just gonna ask her to re-sign it and put it into this document, okay? Okay, Holly?
Yeah, sure.
Or should Carrie
This
Ann
one?
sign it?
This one, yes, and if you could just redo it and then we'll put it into the packet as
Yeah.
one.
Okay. Just so everybody knew what the document was that I was doing.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, welcome, everybody.
Thank you. Just so you know that you are being recorded. You're not actually recorded, you're being
Bill,
filmed.
Video.
People are video hearing you.
Okay.
Okay? And so what we're gonna do to start is we're just gonna ask you to give us your name and your association with ASAP, and then we'll do the same on the board, and then what we'll ask you to do is give your presentation to us, and then we'll ask questions. Okay? So we're gonna start.
My name is Carrie Ann Letty, and I am interim president of ASAP.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm Holly McGowan. I'm the former president of ASAP.
Who does everything?
Yeah, Bill does.
Yes.
I'm Sue Minton, and I'm the program director for ASAP.
Yeah,
Welcome.
yeah, I know. She's doing great. Alan Bell, treasurer.
Welcome, Ellen.
Ann Medina, I work for Nantucket Human Services.
Denise Crono, I'm the finance committee representative to the contract review committee.
Bert Johnson, Housing Authority, Housing Nantucket.
Linda Williams, member at large, everything else.
John Balash, member at large of the contract review committee.
And Director Hertz, member at large and chair.
Rachel Day, Director of Human Services for the town of Nantucket, and this is audio video recorded, so I'll also disclose that I am not a board member of CRC, I am staff, individual assistant, so I will disclose to all of you, I am the current vice president of ASAP, so I will not be taking part necessarily in questions from your end.
Okay. It's your floor.
It's our floor.
It's your floor now.
Do you have any questions for us?
No, you get to present.
We get to present. Oh my gosh. All right. You want me to present what we're doing? What we're doing?
And maybe you can introduce us to your.
Okay.
And
So
sort of.
our program director, Erin Schrader, ended up leaving us before the closing out of the last year's grant, unfortunately, to become a nurse. So it was for good reason, but she left us in May. And, left us in the position of, instead of hiring a project coordinator, which we were in the process of interviewing for, we had to change horses and needed a program director. So two of those candidates were who were candidates for project coordinator became program director candidates. And so Susan Bowman was hired as a program director last spring and helped get us through the summer, but she realized it wasn't really her thing, dealing with government grants. So we reopened that position, and we were fortunate to have Sue take that on, and she's doing a great job with it, with her past experiences and other grants. So that's good. So now we are, again, interviewing for candidates for project coordinator. We've never had two people. It's kind of a two-person job, and so we'll be really in good standing once we get both positions filled for this year. So anyway, that's where we are with the federal grant. It's our last year of that grant. So we do need to do some major fundraising this year, and that's going to be a big focus of ours, along with continuing our programs that we've been doing. And also we kind of have a new initiative that we started, and we hope to do more with that, which is clean scene activities. So the first one was our event 2 summers ago, where we had a dance in the summertime. Then last summer we collaborated with the Parks and Rec, and Cheryl Emery was then in charge of Parks and Rec, and we offered a series of Zumba classes on Saturdays for free to the community at the Essex Street Park. So that was another kind of a clean scene initiative event. And then recently we had one at the Boys and Girls Club, where we invited a high school band to play at the Boys and Girls Club as an alternative with the sports that were going on there, and that was the weekend after Halloween. So we're hoping to do more of those types of events for youth and community. So that's kind of a new initiative, relatively. I think most things are still ongoing. We'll have one more Pride survey under the federal grant this year, and for the, that's where we survey the middle and high school students. Every 2 years we've been doing that with the grant. This year we're talking about a collaboration with the Nantucket data platform, because the Behavioral Health Task Force has asked them to do some sort of assessment of the behavioral health needs of Nantucket in some capacity. And the principals of the middle and high school were interested to see if somehow they could maybe have some input into more specific Nantucket questions for our youth when we do the survey. So Carrie Ann and I met with the data platform people and both the principals of the schools to start conversation about that. So that should be interesting once we decide what that's going to look like. Or if it, if it goes anywhere. It could end up just being the Pride survey we've been doing all along. Another thing that we're wishing to do this year is to, after we get the Pride survey results, is implement a social norms campaign that had been tried several years ago on Nantucket. And that's when you take the results of the data and you create posters, or our idea is to maybe create bookmarks with the information, and then you get out into the community with the libraries and the bookstores and the school new library, which is pretty awesome. So that's something we would like to focus on this year too, is that initiative. And we have some new board members.
A lot of new board members.
Yeah, so it's good because there's new energy coming into the board. We have Gino Gang, who's representing our media sector, and he has a young boy who's in, I think, middle school age.
She's in early middle school.
Yeah, so that's good. We also have Patricia Harding, who works a lot with the elementary school as an interpreter and TA. So we're excited to have her on board to extend our reach more, because that's another focus this year, is we really want to ramp up our outreach to the non-English speaking community. So that's going to be a major effort. And who else joined our board?
Ryan Webb, who's from the fire department.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
and
That's a
he's,
good
he's
one.
also Spanish speaking, which would be great. And again, he's in the position to see all kinds of people every day.
And understand it.
Yeah.
He's
Paula Maloney.
Paula
Oh,
Maloney
good.
just
Yeah.
joined, yeah. And we also have the good fortune of being able to, Fairlands has an intern, what's his name? David Hayes? Yep, David Hayes. And part of his internship for the school he's studying with to become a licensed social worker is to do a component of community service while he's here. So he is collaborating with us, and he's going to help us with some of our presentation initiatives this year. So that's
Was
good.
he the one that was down with the shaving the mustache and Jimmy Fallon? Was he the gentleman?
don't
that-
know,
He
'cause I
does
don't
comedy,
know.
so it's possible.
That was Yeah, so he's involved with us. So yeah, we're excited to have.
And Jim Perlman resigned with us.
Oh,
And
good.
Oh, good.
Good, that's a big one.
He was
Sounds
on the
like a
board
good-
10 years ago. He's back on.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've got a good board.
Yeah,
So,
we do. I feel good
okay.
about our board.
is that it? Do you have anything you wanna say about how you feel about what you're coming into?
I think I said during my interview that it sounded like a big challenge, a little terrifying, and completely exhilarating. So I'm really looking forward to jumping in and working with my friends here and making a difference. I think we're gonna accomplish some good stuff.
And to her credit, none of us know what's going to happen after this grant is done. So she has jumped in both feet with the possibility that we may have to get rid of her. But we will survive and we will come
No,
through.
I understand
But,
what you're
but
saying.
she, we had to make that clear at the first because we're uncertain at this point how we will proceed, but we will proceed.
So you're saying your commitment is true to the cause?
That's exactly
Oh,
what
yeah,
I'm
which
saying.
is really, yeah.
We need to fundraise.
Yes.
Especially given the opiate.
Okay, Denise, we're gonna start with you. Thank you. Thank you very much for the excellent proposal, by the way, very clear. A couple quick questions. Carrie Ann, when does interim come off your title?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm here indefinitely until we find somebody to replace. Somebody else wants to step up and do it.
Okay, so you're committed as well?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. 'Cause I saw interim and I didn't know if you were coming in or going out. So,
Just came in to give, hopefully relieve Holly just a little. Unfortunately, she's doing the majority of the work anyways. I'm just kind of here to take up any slack so she can enjoy the last year of her son's senior year in high school.
thank you for that.
December.
One question in terms of the family awareness program on addiction 2 times per year. That's your biggest single line item of cost. What is I don't need to know what comprises the whole 7,650, but what are the big ticket items in that number of the costs?
I do have a total breakdown. I'd be happy to send it to you. I think for Ginny it ends up being 3,000 for the
Okay, so it's a
1,500 a day.
speaker.
And then her travel, and then the lodging.
Okay,
and
that's
yeah,
fine. That's,
everything
yeah,
else is
I wasn't
just
sure if that's what it was.
Advertising is always kind of a big chunk of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I needed, thank you. And other than that, excellent work and thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
Over to you, Bert.
Any programs that you found weren't successful that you've dropped over the last year or two?
We haven't dropped a program, but we're thinking of revamping. I guess it's creating world leaders. We had a tough time keeping the kids interested in the 10-week time period. So we're thinking of hopefully shortening it up, keep them, wanting to do more
The
things.
retention span.
Yeah, and it was also very hard to get kids to participate. So, look at more ways of recruiting kids for that. But we really haven't dropped anything, just kind of.
Yeah, we just kind of make changes as we
Revamping
see that if they're not popular or if there's another way to reach people, then we rethink it. But another exciting thing I think is that we've engaged in conversations with Michaela Grace of the Graceline Institute. And I don't know if you know her, but she's got an extensive background in working with at-risk youth in different different modalities, and she's also teamed up with Floyd, and I think they're doing some interesting things together, and they would like to do something having to do with music and engaging kids and provide a teaching where they don't actually realize that they're getting, a spiritual teaching or component to what they're doing with them. So that's, I think, going to be interesting to see how that evolves. And it might be that we, have them do something with the students at the club or come into the school. We haven't figured out yet, but we're in conversation definitely with Michaela about that.
Linda?
As you know, I've been not a supporter of the Red Ribbon.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Because of what my kids have all said about it.
Yeah.
One of my older kids was the first year they did it, and then the rest of them got it. So I've not been a fan of it, and we didn't fund it, parts of it last year. But I love everything else that you do. The drug take-back event, do you actually find kids doing that? Or are we just talking about community-wide?
That's community.
Because I know it's at the pharmacies.
Yeah, no, definitely no.
Not in the school.
No.
No, not the school.
That's for the community.
Okay. But the rest of it I supported wholeheartedly last year. I'm still having trouble with that red ribbon thing.
What's
the problem?
The comments from, I've had 8 kids in that school, all of which have taken it. And they don't take it seriously. I get a free pizza, I get this, I get that. They don't really pay any attention. And 5 of them have had problems with pot, the 5 foster kids, and they had no use for it at all.
Right.
They paid no attention to it, they didn't care about the message, they weren't getting involved. They said, oh, free day, free this, free that, got a pencil, whatever else it was. Remember, they gave out certain things, and we sort of had that discussion before about what to actually give them. And the pizza, and it was just whatever. It was just a whatever, not a, I'm really getting the message and I'm really paying attention to it. So I don't know how to fix that.
Yeah, we don't either, unfortunately, for high school kids. We took a survey. We have a high school girl on our board, and she took a survey after some of the events, actually one in particular, and we have a hard time getting through to the high school kids. We have we can get through to middle school kids, and maybe even younger children, but yeah, the kids are tough. I agree.
Can we redirect some of the funding for that red ribbon thing in the high school to do something else during that week other than red ribbons? I've had a couple of suggestions over the years because of what I took in college.
Okay.
But there are other ways of getting at the high school kids that would be too much for the middle school and the elementary, but hard enough hitting and more direct and more relatable in the high school level.
Okay.
Because that's why I have problems with the red ribbon, anything beyond middle school.
It's a community event. Actually, it's a national event as well. So I think we have to, unfortunately, go with as much as we can, but we are so open to any ideas you might have at the high school level, or any level.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I don't think we gave out a lot of stuff this year.
No.
Like, they had the presentation where we had a group of actors come in, but there was no pizza, there were no giveaways, so.
So maybe if we just sort of bring it down at a more elementary level, and we just sort of bring it down in hard-hitting level, because I don't think you can turn on TV today without seeing somebody having to be Narcan 50 times to come back. That's some sort of an idol for these kids that are somebody they can relate to, an athlete or an actor or something along those lines. Guys, this can happen to you. It can happen to somebody in your family. It's that kind of message you've got to get across.
Yeah, we've had that backfire though too. Because then the kids turn around and they say, look they're successful now, they survived, maybe we can screw up for the next 5 years.
But then you go after the ones that did not survive.
Well, they're hard to get to speak because they're dead.
Yeah, that's what they've asked us for.
I'm gonna go to John.
Didn't bring it back.
Okay.
I will just pass on this one because I really don't have enough direct connection to be able to be meaningful in the question.
Good question. Okay, I have a few questions, but I'll make a comment on the Red Ribbon Week, and I disagree with Linda in the sense that if you reach one child, you have done your job. You know, if we're funding something and one child gets reached in that high school, then you've done something. And that's what's important, it's one person at a time that you're gonna make a difference on. You cannot make a difference in hundreds of them. But if you can get one child during one of your presentations, then you've done something right. You know, and not funding something at the high school level, I would oppose it, because I really believe that if you reach that one, you've done something amazing. So, that's my viewpoint, you know. You had the improbable players come that week, and how did they respond to how did that come across?
That was our problem. I think the high school kids weren't as interested as.
Some certainly did
50-50.
respond very positively, but
The middle school was all over it.
yeah.
Yeah, and their performances were different. They did vary the performance from middle to high school, but some of the high school students, but you're dealing with 9th through 12th. So that's a big age difference.
Right.
So some of them felt it was not, mature enough for them. But then, you've got to reach this broad range of kids from 14 to 19 years old, basically. So
Where do you split the age groups up?
then
In the high
you've
school.
got to speak to John Bucky, because he'll only give us
So
one little block at a
He
time.
gives you one little
I mean, their program
block.
could be so much more extensive. They offer to go and do breakout groups, because they're all persons in recovery themselves. They really enjoyed that after the performance that they each told their personal story, and the kids could ask them questions. But if you could actually spend some time with the subject, and John would let us do breakout groups to really ask questions, it would be much more meaningful.
That's what I'm after.
But we just don't get the time.
In health
That's
class,
the bottom
maybe
line.
expand
I have
it
brought
in health
Janine
class.
into health classes, and they really appreciate it in middle and high school, and that's small groups, and
That's
that's been
health,
really
guys.
effective.
How many families have actually attended Janine's presentations over the last couple of years?
Well, over 100 in all, but the past couple of years, so we had almost a full house of 10, I think, the last session, and before that we had 4 or 5. So it's it's varied. The classroom seats 12. That's the maximum that we put in group.
So you've reached about 100 through the program, 100 families?
Yeah.
Which
Awesome.
Janine's workshop, the family awareness program. Did you ever come to
Not the NAMI stuff.
Oh,
is it?
no,
That's
it's just
that's
different. Yeah. If you haven't come, you should
Very
come and
educational.
listen.
And
Sue took it for the first time.
you talked about student board members.
Mm-hmm.
Do you only have one?
We have some people that are on. We had 2, and
I
then
brought 2 new.
yeah, we brought 2 more than this new time too as well. So maybe we're looking at about 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Have you thought of expanding that even more if possible?
Well, yeah. We like students.
Always.
They're making our ads now.
They
So
are
this
great.
is the ad that our student board member made for Red Ribbon Week, because the theme was Life's your journey, travel drug free. So she created her own
That's great.
thing. Yeah, that was our flyer, and she wanted to make one specific for students. So she did that, and that was in the Veritas ad.
Students, they do
And then we have the students now do all our Veritas advertising. They create the ads for us. So we're incorporating students whenever we can.
So we're having a student advisory board for you guys.
A student advisory board. Well, I was just thinking, it's so silly that this is such a huge crisis in our country. And when the HIV epidemic was rampant, they formed a student group around
my
that.
daughter
But
started
there's
it,
no
Peers Promoting
student
AIDS awareness.
group on, substance abuse or substance misuse. So I think that's to come. That needs to happen. And that's working with, administration. I mean, one of the questions that the community can go online and take a survey and put into the superintendent, and one of my questions that I hope the school committee will ask is, would you embrace for the school a, prevention programming for students and community from grades 3 through 12 that's evidence-based, because we don't have anything consistent.
Can I jump? I have another question I forgot to ask. Okay.
Go right
Madam
ahead.
Chairman, may I ask another question?
Take my time.
On page 5, you talk about the age that individuals start with substance abuse, and it's a horrific number, right? It's just over 10 years old, basically. What is your biggest concern and worry when marijuana will be available, legally dispensed on the island? And is there anything the town should be looking at, or we as a community should be looking at in respect of that? Other than it's too late to say no, obviously. So.
I hate the whole idea.
Yeah, I'm a little more concerned with the vaping issue right now, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's any regulation over that. And I think that we do have a store that sells vaping supplies.
They're not supposed to sell to anybody under 18.
They're not? Is that a law, town by a law?
It was supposed to be a national law.
Federal, yeah,
Federal
it's a federal law, I believe,
So is
like
that in
cigarettes.
place?
I think so. Well, they were talking about it last month.
That's good.
It is being sold to children under 18.
Yeah.
It is heavily being.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And they
Isn't
can,
the
they can buy it
sale
online.
supposed to be stopped in retail places?
I
Vaping
believe,
for
I
under
think the
18.
I think the
FDA.
FDA is, they put out a proposed ban, I think, to under 21.
Is it under 21 now? Because I've heard under 18.
I believe their
I
proposal.
think I heard 21 too.
I believe their proposal was for 21, and they were going to ban everything except flavors, except menthol. And
The whole thing is disgusting.
they're proposing eventually to do away with the menthol.
So you're more concerned about vaping?
Well, I'm very concerned about marijuana, but the vaping, the kids think it's completely harmless. They're
Okay.
starting that. I've heard, fifth graders having, vaping in there. It's in the middle school. You can vape THC, which is the component in marijuana that's addictive, and nicotine. And so they're creating addictive brains potentially by starting that as early as they do and thinking it's completely harmless. And it's just so accessible. I think it's
I'm nicotine in there.
concerned with
Huge.
marijuana, the
Yeah,
marijuana,
we
like,
are too.
very
Yeah,
concerned,
we
and I
are.
think, unfortunately,
Huge
it comes down to, the parents' attitudes.
Mhm.
I think we have to go after the parents hard, because if they don't crack down on their kids or change their attitude towards the brain damage it can cause on a young kid's mind, we're all gonna be in trouble. We're gonna lose a whole generation, I think. I mean, I feel really crazy about it.
Well, our
already
stand
have
is
actually.
no marijuana under 25,
Mm-hmm,
just because it's the developing brain.
mm-hmm,
No drugs ever, but no
Yeah.
marijuana, even though it's a drug, until 25.
How about anybody under 90?
Yeah, I know, but that's our stand on it.
mm-hmm.
And the edibles are really
And that's
dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, they've
They
already
look
had.
just like regular, I saw gummies on television. It looked like the candy gummies that kids buy at the corner store.
Well, how about that third grader group the other day that brought it in and the kids got sick and they had to be taken to the hospital because they didn't know that it was in there.
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
come
the
on,
kids
people.
can get the parents cookies or
Be
brownies or
responsible,
whatever.
at least, if you're gonna be
I
an
believe
idiot parent.
the recreational stores are not supposed to be making things that look like
Like
candy.
things, yes.
I don't believe that's the same rule for the medicinal, so that can be a problem, because if you have medicinal gummy bears, you need to hide them, lock them, and keep
Well,
them
you
from
need
your
to be
children.
acting
but-
responsibly, but if you're also doped up, you can't act responsibly, then they're gonna be lying around on the counter. I mean, the whole thing is a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. It's
Thank
basically
you.
a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's not gonna help.
Yeah.
What they get,
I didn't even do it in high
with the
school,
drug
that was back in
crisis.
the hippy dippy days, in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, we were pleased that the town limited outlets to 2.
Mm-hmm.
We were at that meeting and have been advocating at forums.
I didn't realize there was 94 retail establishments or 94 places where you could get alcohol until I read because I started count, I nearly just thought of, I'm like, wait a minute, how many?
We're talking about restaurants here, too.
I realized that, Linda, when I started to do the math.
And I'm going, wait, where am I?
But per ratio, we're one of the biggest in the nation.
Yeah, and the numbers are,
Yeah.
start dates are, we shouldn't be best in class on this. This is not a good thing to be leading the pack. It's terrible.
No.
So your work is essential, that's the message, right? You knew that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pressure's on.
It is on.
Come help us.
Yes,
Please.
It takes all of us, truly.
Well, let me tell you, when they first started, my daughter's 41 now, so it's from 25 years ago, we started the substance abuse advisory board. Ellen, I remember that was in high school. Aaron was Aaron graduated in 95, so
Yeah.
that's just before that. had to have been 25 of us on that group.
Yeah, I was on the original one.
Yeah.
Pat Martin started.
Yeah.
25 people on that group, and we would meet up in the big room up there at the high school behind the stage. And the big thing then was drug dogs. You know, we could not foresee where this whole thing was going.
Oh, I think, well,
We knew
I
that there was a
disagree.
problem.
I think it was out there, the picture was there, and that's why we did the huge presentation to the town of Nantucket, where every student showed up that night in the audit. We had a huge
Yeah.
presentation in the auditorium. I think Pat Martin had a good idea where it was headed.
Right, definitely.
She was at the top of her game and saw things a decade to two further than they were.
But nobody knew synthetic heroin was gonna be so cheap, and nobody knew the opiate thing was gonna get out of control, you know, and the barbiturates back then were the problem for some, usually by prescription. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of pot, and, you know, a lot of
Cocaine back then.
PCP was just coming in.
We lost a lot of
Meth.
community members to
Meth.
hard drugs back then. Let's think
Horrible.
about it.
Sure.
A lot of them,
Horrible.
so it was pretty horrible.
But it's not like it is now where it's so young and so easy to get. The ease of getting anything now, and the fact that marijuana is legal it's a whole new picture on this thing.
No reason to test like with alcohol to see if someone.
No,
No,
they don't.
that's-
They're trying to
Oh, yeah.
develop something. They have to do
Right.
suspicion and then go to court and get a blood test. They have to get a warrant for a blood test. don't
Is
they?
that right?
Yeah, that's perfect. I actually,
These are.
yeah, where
Unless
did
the
just,
person's in such a
Ian, can
serious
you
accident,
staple
the
that to
hospital
the
might
original
Now they take
document,
it, yes.
please?
I highly recommend a new book called American Fix. It's really good. The young man who wrote it had become addicted to Oxycontin through an ankle injury. He's a politician working the Obama campaign, and he has really summed up, exactly
The pathology.
how you got there and the pathology, and it's totally anybody and everybody, and we just have completely insufficient efforts for any sort of meaningful treatment. 90% of the people who need treatment for this disorder do not get. 90%. And we're losing really a whole generation. There are more people who have died in this crisis than in the entire Vietnam War. It's huge, and we're really not paying that much attention to it.
Well, we're talking
it's
about
really sad.
the doctors and the drug companies
Because it's
here.
a medical disorder that we're
Right.
not treating medically.
If they come into you with with a prescription for Oxy for a knee injury, let's say on the football field, you have to fill it.
Yeah, there's
But
some
now there's
restrictions.
rules. The rules have gotten strict. They have to limit the first week
Right.
to a 1 week supply. They also have to check it's not fully national, but probably 26 states. They have to go through a database to make sure that this person hasn't.
They have an inform shop, they have
Yeah.
a pharmacy shop.
Well,
At least here,
I had
there's
a
two
friend who
pharmacies.
was a lawyer, back injury, doctor prescribed Oxycontin, he got hooked on it, and because he was in that business, he had lots of doctors, that's why this new computer system is so good. He would just get a prescription from this doctor, and that doctor didn't know about the prescription he had from the other.
Oh, yeah.
So he had 5 or 6 prescriptions going at the same time, and none of the doctors knew.
So that's why
He
so
was
the
getting that
physician
money.
has to check before they prescribe,
Yeah.
and the pharmacy has to check before they dispense.
Well, here's an example. I had an emergency appendectomy a couple of years ago. And they couldn't take it out, so I waited 2 months, and then I went over to the Cape Cod Hospital. And I went in and said, I'm allergic to all that stuff anyway, but I said, do not give me a prescription for any of that crap. Nothing. I don't want to take it up back to Nantucket and have somebody get a hold of it. I come out of the anesthesia, I get up, walk around, and they hand me a prescription for Oxycontin.
Yeah.
And I said, what are you doing? I said, don't do that. Don't give it to me. I'm not taking it. And I made them rip it up into shreds in front of me so someone else couldn't use it. And I got up and walked out. Came home same day.
Yeah, this guy.
I said,
had
what
so
the
much
hell?
more.
They just handed it to me like
give it
out
to
of
you
nowhere. And I
everywhere
said,
now.
I don't take painkillers. Don't give it to me.
Yeah.
And I could have come back here and somebody else could have gotten a hold of the prescription. I mean, this is insanity.
It is
They just
insanity.
handed it to you when you said don't. This
But
is what we're dealing with.
exactly
It's a
the guy in
medical,
the story said too.
medical.
Okay, I think it's a very
Form.
passionate thing for a lot of people. And I think there's a lot of stories that go with it. And, I'm glad that we have you guys there in our corner trying to help us.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thanks for.
Thank you
yeah,
all.
Thanks
Got
for
an
everything
uphill
and thanks
battle.
for your
Thank you.
presentation. Okay,
Thank you.
I had tried to reach you, Holly, all of you while you're here. We do have to do an on-site interview.
It's in the pharmacy.
Yeah, go to Ellen's.
We did that one year.
We did have the pharmacy one year, we've done it at my house, let me see that.
We could do it at our storage unit.
Why not?
Could hang out with my 3 cats in my office.
Okay, so it's Denise and I, and if we, what we're trying to schedule it for is the first, like, 10 days of January, so that we can get into deliberations.
Sure.
Would you be, are you available like the 8th?
I'm, look, but I would assume I am. Let me check,
If it's the 8th, do you mind doing it at 6 p.m.?
let me check.
As long as she doesn't have, income.
It's a Tuesday.
I have FinCom at 4, so I can't.
Okay, so how about the 7th?
7 should be okay. My crew is going on vacation, that's why I have to be one of those situations where I may have to be at the pharmacy.
Okay, what time works for you, Alan? And then Denise, what are your commitments on the 7th?
I'm wide open on the
Okay.
7th, so I can be flexible that day. Let's put it this way, you're first to book for the 7th, so.
I have one book at 10, I have a 10 a.m. That's the only time on.
It may have to be at 6 p.m. again, because I think they're leaving that day.
Okay.
Okay.
Denise, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So it should be,
And where? At the pharmacy?
You wanna do-
Yeah.
we'll do it at the
45
pharmacy
Main
again?
Street?
Yeah, no, I know where you are.
So it's usually.
Thank
Well,
you.
some people get,
But the out of town
yeah,
pharmacy,
it's- oh yeah. It used to be they walk into one store or the other and yell at you.
it's either the
But
top
now
pharmacy
they,
or the
now
bottom
they yell at
pharmacy.
you, or it's out of town or in town.
Security units usually, it's
Yep,
an
no
informal,
problem.
so
See you on-
that's usually in charge of meetings. So
Okay, and it
gives us more information.
Alright, what was the date that you?
Did you meet my
Is it,
niece this summer? She was
the 7th
interning at
at
the
6 p.m.?
hospital in pharmacy.
Yeah.
Emily Cronow.
Okay.
I know, it'd always be good.
Try to be there, I'm coming in.
She was working with David Small.
Yeah.
And she
Boats and
is.
planes,
I think
they're real.
as a
Oh,
member,
yeah.
she'll be back again this
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah.
This is something that, we need
Okay, it is,
to sign with David Hayes, it's from his
But
school.
give me one
That
minute.
says that we're
Give me 1 minute.
having help us for his internship.
Yeah, no, I didn't know if
Thanks,
maybe
Ashley. Thank
you
you very
guys,
much
their
for your
paths crossed.
presentation.
Thank you.
I'm making a motion. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to scan it too?